What rating did you get on your life insurance policy or on your other policy that you took out? This is an important question, and it's one that is oftentimes not addressed or glossed over, but it's actually very important because obviously your rating can affect the performance of your policy, whether we're talking about a whole life insurance policy where the mortality costs can create a drag on the cash value growth, or any other policy, a disability policy, critical illness policy, long term care policy, whatever it is. A good agent is going to get you a better rating. And there could be a wide variety in outcomes where you, as the applicant, are the same person, but a good agent will know how to shop your case around and get you the best rating. Another agent may not. Not only that, something that I don't see enough agents doing is improving ratings on existing policies. If you have an existing policy where you did not get the best rating, but your health has improved, it's possible for you to get that rating improved to a better or to the best rating. When your agent is taking you through the, first of all, the discovery and case design process, and then eventually the application process, he first should pre underwrite you. He's going to ask you some questions about your health so he can get a better understanding of what rating you might get. Depending on how you answer, he may pre underwrite you with several different carriers before you apply to try and get an idea of who's going to give you the best rating and what's a reasonable expectation of that rating. He should be doing that unless it's pretty clear what rating you're going to get. Not only that, when you put that policy in force, the agent should tell you, here's the rating that you are getting. And if it is not the very best rating, then the agent should tell you why you're not getting that very best rating. And is it something that can be changed in the future? Sometimes a rating can be improved, sometimes it cannot be. I'll give you several examples as we go through this, real life examples that I've worked on myself. But a good example of one that cannot be improved, let's say you're perfectly healthy and you apply, but you only get the standard rating. You don't get a preferred rating because your father died of a heart attack at age 40. That's family history. That comes up in the application process. And even though you're perfectly healthy, because you have a family history of heart disease at a young age, that's going to impact your rating. And that's not something you can change. What if you get the standard rating instead of a preferred rating because, according to their height and weight tables, you are 20 pounds overweight? Then, obviously, if you lose 20 pounds, you can get that rating improved. This is something that even a lot of experienced agents don't actually know. Denzel Rodriguez, God bless him for his humility, on my show, we recorded an episode and we talked about this, and he admitted that it wasn't until 7 years in the business that he even knew that this was an option. He didn't know that you could get a rating improved on an existing policy, but this is indeed something that you can do. If you put a policy in force and you don't get the best rating or you get a substandard rating, it's possible to improve that depending on the reason for that rating. If you're a smoker, you're going to get a tobacco rating. But then if you quit smoking, you can eventually get that rating removed, and so on. There can be many different reasons for this. And this is important. This is something that your agent should be discussing with you. He should be pre underwriting you and giving you an idea of what to expect. Depending on what health conditions you have, he may spend extra time submitting what we call informal applications and having conversations with different contacts in the industry in order to find the best rating for you. And this is where someone who has built up a good network and is truly independent can do a lot better job than an agent who doesn't have that same network, doesn't do as much of the investigation, and defaults to using one or two companies all the time. Now, every agent is going to have a preferred carrier because you cannot be an expert in every carrier's product. That's fine. But when there are health issues, he should take extra time to determine who is going to give you the best rating. Because again, there can be a wide variety of outcomes depending on whether you're working with a good agent or just a decent agent who doesn't spend as much time or know how to do that. Like Denzel Rodriguez, who I consider to be a good agent, didn't even know you could get ratings improved on existing policies. There's no one who really trains you, unfortunately, in this space. And even if they do, there's so many things to know. No agent could possibly know all of them. That's why I utilize partners in my network extensively, because oftentimes other agents or even my clients will have suggestions that I hadn't thought about or didn't know was even a possibility. A good example would be a client I had recently. We got him and his wife both the best rating, the super preferred rating on their life insurance, even though both of them had some health history. And one of them had just a year earlier gotten only the standard rating on a policy that he put in force. So with that other agent, he was a good agent, works with a good, well known agency. He only got the standard rating. When he came and worked with me a year later, we got him the preferred rating, the best rating. That's a difference. Then what did I do? I had reviewed those policies as part of the consultation I did. And so I happened to know that particular agent because he's a well known agent. And I went back and I took the initiative, talked to the customer first, and I took the initiative and told that agent, we got him the super preferred rating. Why were you only able to get him standard? The client didn't know. And he said it was because of the lab results. So what we're doing now is now with that other agent, I'm sending him back to that other agent to get the rating improved. He doesn't even have to get labs done again. He can use the more recent lab results to hopefully get that rating improved from standard to the best rating on an existing policy. That can make a significant difference on the way that your policy performs because your mortality costs have gone lower. This is me as an agent doing my job. For what it's worth, this is not something that is directly making me any money. In fact, if anything, it's probably reducing my compensation because if you get a better rating, the premium you're going to pay goes down. But it's doing the right thing by my clients. And I do think in the long run, an agent who's proactive, who gets his customers the best deal, is going to end up making more money in the long run. But that could be part of the reason why agents are not, there's not a strong financial incentive for an agent to be doing this. But I do think it's going to work out better for them and their clients in the long run if they do. I have an example of a client where we got him a standard rating with no medical exam. And he had a financial advisor who was also life licensed that he is still working with and manages their investments, and tried to take that business away from me and put him through an application process, told him he was going to get the best rating. And it ended up in limbo so long the client got frustrated with it and gave up because, in my opinion, he gave him an unrealistic expectation. I did speak with that client, and there may be a way potentially to get him a preferred rating. The reason why he got the standard is because of lifestyle choices that he's made. And if he wants to change those lifestyle choices, then potentially we could get it improved. But as long as those remain, he's not going to get better than standard. And so again, that was an agent setting an unrealistic expectation that you're going to get the best rating in order to try and take the business away from me. And the client went through the process and had to go through a medical exam. They put him through a lot, put him through a lot of questions that I don't think he was expecting because that agent maybe didn't set expectations very well. And when he went through the process with me, it was much smoother. They didn't even require a medical exam. And so eventually he just gave up. That business is still with me. Generally speaking, someone who manages investments is not an expert in life insurance. They're good with investments. That's what they do. That's where they're at their best. But on the life insurance side, they're not as much of an expert. In my opinion, they should be partnering with someone to do the life insurance rather than trying to do it themselves because you cannot be an expert in everything. Unfortunately, I think the reason why they try to do both is because they just don't view life insurance as a specialty. They view it as something that's just super easy and anyone can do it. So I might as well do it myself, which is why their clients end up dramatically underinsured when it comes to life insurance and never have any kind of well designed whole life insurance policy. They'll just have a small term policy, which is not sufficient for their needs. I have an example also of a cancer survivor, and we got him the super preferred rating. We were not expecting that, but we were able to get him that. He had cancer in childhood. Most agents wouldn't know how to do that. And this is with a good mutual company. And we've converted that to actually at that time, we applied directly for a whole life insurance policy. We have a good whole life insurance policy in force. Even if you're going to get a substandard rating, I've talked about applying for convertible term first and then converting it and why that's generally the best practice. There are some exceptions to that. One would be if it looks like you're going to get a substandard rating, There are some companies that have what we call a table shave program where if you apply directly for whole life, not for term, if you're rated anything down to table 4, they will make it a standard on the whole life insurance policy. That's a reason to apply directly for whole life insurance, and that's a reason to go with one of those companies because there are only a couple of companies that will do that. Not only that, there's even more nuance because one of those companies, while they do the table shave, so they'll instead of a table 2 rating, which is a substandard rating, they'll bump you up to standard. They limit how you can design the whole life insurance policy. And so with one particular case, I was working with their illustration expert. And for that particular guy, if we accepted the standard and used the table shape program, it was actually not as good as if we just took the table 2 rating and allowed me to design it however I wanted. Because of the design limitations on that standard policy, the table 2 rated policy actually performed better because if we took the table 2 rating, there were no limitations on design. And I can drive the mortality cost down to a certain extent through case design. There's another carrier that has a table shape program that does not limit case design when they do the table shape. I'm getting deep into the weeds, but the point is there can be a lot of nuances and a wide variety in outcomes depending on the agent that you're working with in terms of what health rating are you going to get. We also, there was a client who was not a habitual smoker, but had some recent history of smoking. And we went with a different carrier. The carrier that I typically would go with was only going to give us the standard. And again, I pre-underwrote him. I'm doing this before we do an application. We ended up applying with a different carrier, still a good mutual company, but a different carrier that's a bit more lenient on the tobacco use. And we ended up getting him the super preferred rating. That's another example. The difference between standard and super preferred can be a significant difference. I had an asthmatic client. He was originally going to be table 2. We worked with a carrier, worked through some things, worked through some reinsurance, and then we were able to get him standard with that same carrier. Again, significant difference in outcomes. These are the things a good agent can do for you. They'll understand you, they'll work with you, they'll advocate for you, they'll shop your case around to multiple carriers, they'll address it through case design, table shave programs, any way they can to get you the best possible rating that they reasonably can. And of course, we're limited in what we can do. Unfortunately, I have had customers that were declined and there was nothing we could do about it. I had a client who had cancer that had recurred, and it was a particular form of cancer that can be particularly dangerous. That particular customer, unfortunately, is uninsurable. We sometimes get surprises both in the negative and the positive. I can never 100% answer for underwriting. I can be right about 80% of the time, but we still get surprises. I'm not an underwriter, obviously, for good reason. They're not going to give me access to what they do behind the scenes. That would be a conflict of interest. I can never be 100% accurate, but I do my best to get my clients the best rating. And again, after we put the policy in force, the client is going to know why you didn't get the best rating. And if it's something we can change, let's work on that. If you need to lose a few pounds, here's some extra encouragement to lose that weight so we can get this rating improved. That same client where we got the other client where we got him super preferred, we also took out a disability policy and they put an exclusion on it for anything related to the colon because his father had gotten colon cancer at a fairly young age, under the age of 40. His father is still alive and doing well, but he had gotten colon cancer early on. So there's an exclusion on the disability policy. What we're going to do is the client's going to get a colonoscopy, get the results from that colonoscopy along with a statement from his doctor, either that genetic testing is not necessary or we've done the genetic testing and everything looks good and we're going to get that exclusion removed. This is another thing with disability policies where your occupation class or any exclusions or modifications on the policy could potentially be improved in the future. This particular client was a doctor. And on his previous disability policy, he got what we call a 4P rating, which is a rating for doctors. Now he's in hospital administration, which is more of a desk job. For his new policy that we took out, we got him a better rating, a 5A occupation class, because that's considered safer. It's more of a desk job. There's less physical work involved than being a doctor. We're getting those exclusions and modifications removed. I had a client where we were applying for a critical illness policy, They found from his recent colonoscopy, apparently there had been some precancerous polyps removed. So they removed the cancer coverage. I, as a good agent, immediately, that was a surprise to us because the client didn't know that. His doctor had not told him that. As far as he knew, everything was fine from the colonoscopy. And we applied with a different carrier that had some different requirements, different application processes. We put his critical illness policy in force with a cancer exclusion that was not changeable. And then we supplemented that with a cancer only policy that we were able to get with a different carrier. So, again, this is what a good agent can do, working with different carriers, different policies to get you the best overall solution and navigating that whole underwriting process, being your advocate through that underwriting process and always working to get you the best possible deal. There can be a wide range of outcomes, whether you have a good agent who has a good network and knows how to advocate for you versus a decent agent who just puts you through the application process and we get whatever we get. Another client, we were able to get a back exclusion removed when we put his disability policy in force. He had been seeing a chiropractor. He had some tennis elbow, nothing major. But because it was recent, they excluded on the policy. A year later, we got that exclusion removed, showing him that everything was fine. I had a client also who had, I believe it was APD, some other disorder like that. All the carriers were going to give him at least table two rating, but we were able to find a fraternal organization that gave him the standard rating. And that's who he ended up applying with. Again, we didn't apply to all these different carriers. I'm pre-underwriting him with all these different carriers. So I'm doing the legwork, not the client. And then I'm coming to him and saying, okay, we're going to apply with this particular fraternal insurance carrier because they're going to give us standard. Now, sometimes you do have to apply to different carriers, and it might be prudent to do that anyway, just because you never know what will happen with underwriting. You'll have more options on the table. But I always try to make it as simple as I can for my clients. There was a woman who had been uninsurable due to Crohn's disease. We were able to get a policy rated table E, so it's more expensive, but that was the best we were going to get. And now that it's been long enough, we're applying to get it improved to standard. Knowing how to navigate underwriting and get you the best rating and then get that rating improved later is something that a good agent will do for you. And it's something he should be communicating to you up front when he's doing the fact finding. He's giving an indication of what kind of rating we can expect. And if you don't get the best rating, why didn't you get the best rating? And is it something that can be changed? Is it something that can be improved in the future? So I hope this is helpful. We'll talk soon.